Welcome, everybody, to episode 37 of PT Shop Talk. On today's episode, we do our article review follow-up from last time, pragmatic article on manipulation and mobilization. Then we finish with our top 5 shows from the 90s. With me today, as always, is Nick, more power, Doling, and Jeremy hanging with Mr. Van Klompenberg.
Oh, yeah, good shows.
Yeah, I figured you were hanging with Mr. Cooper guy. We'll find out, I guess. He's a Golden State Warrior. You're a Golden State fan, right?
Yeah, that would have been on my short list for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
He's just letting the cat out of the bag early.
Yeah. Yep.
Nick, I figured you had like 2 shows you could watch growing up just based on television availability. So
ours jumped around. Mine's going to skew very heavy into Fox and ABC. And as far as I know, not a whole lot of CBS or NBC because, as I mentioned before, you had to rotate your antenna.
I was just going to say, was it paper, rock, scissors? Who goes out?
Who goes up? My parents didn't let us on it. Our roof was crazy steep. So there was just no real fluid adjusting of that. That's why I say Fox and ABC, which makes me think in hindsight,
shoot it with a BB gun.
It's probably aimed southeast because I think those were coming from Jamestown and Fargo.
Huh. Good call. Yeah, you didn't want to pick up those Devil's Lake stations.
Yeah, and I think Devil's Lake had an affiliate for something. And I think
ABC. I think
Grand Forks was like the NBC affiliate. Something right?
Yeah. We never got NBC, so I'd assume Grand Forks. We got Minot and Devil's Lake were the 2 we got.
Minot. We never got.
Why not? Why not?
Right.
How about you, Jeremy? Did you get a lot of Kara 11 and KSTP?
Yeah, we would have picked that up growing up, but I think we had that. That brings back old memories of watching the Twins in like '91. I think we still had a TV in '91 that had the buttons.
Mm-hmm.
What? Were you the button changer in the family?
Yeah, we didn't have a remote for that TV.
Yeah.
I remember distinctly.
Jeremy, channel 10 now.
Well, it was like 3, 5, 7. I feel like it was all odd numbers, but.
Did you have like the switch between UHF and VHF?
100%.
Get you a couple more channels.
So I remember distinctly we got like the first remote TV we got was a Sanyo. It was like a 24-inch TV, and I was like, whoa! And I'm like,
Sanyo.
You wouldn't work on that for a computer. Like you're ticked off if your laptop screen isn't 24 inches long. It's just.
I mean, isn't it wild?
Different.
Like, it's a different world right now.
Yeah.
It really is.
I love those little TVs. I loved huddling around the tiny TV.
Awesome you mentioned that because you're right. 4 was CBS for us. 7, we had odds and evens because 7 was Fox.
No, we would have too because 4 was WCCO and then 5 was KSTP.
It still is too. That's crazy to this day. It's like if you go all the way to like you get out of the HDs, it's still channel 4, WCCO.
Yeah, we had 4
and 3 was Fox, I think.
Oh, okay. Now it's Fox 9. Fox 9.
Maybe it was 9. It was 9. Yeah, you're right. It
was a multiple. Right. You were close. I'll allow it.
Yeah. All right.
It's a prime number. 3.
Digging back in those memory banks.
Yeah. Hey, you guys ever skate? Nick, I pictured you as a skater in college, like a rollerblader.
No.
Really?
You pictured wrong.
I did picture wrong. I thought you were out there just blading, not caring what people thought.
No.
Jeremy, I assume for you that's way too. Yeah, right. Cutoffs, frosted tips. Yeah, like a mesh tank top. No, huh?
Well, I had a pair of. I feel like they were a shared pair of rollerblades we had in our family. And
okay.
I was in fifth grade when I grew out of them, and I was terrible at them. But ice skates, never been on them in my life.
Really?
Yeah. See, that doesn't surprise me because that's a long way to fall. Like, you're tall. Like that would hurt.
The most recent.
Nick, I felt like had such a nice center of gravity from wrestling that you could have went 30 miles an hour on those things.
No, I skated. We met up with some friends and ice skated. We had a game night group going for like the first 4 years we were down here, 4 or 5.
Thanks for the invite.
By the time we were down here, it was dissolving quickly because we had divorces and
Oh,
moves
gosh.
really affected it.
It's a
Yeah.
high intensity game night. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
went to Skateland with my family this week. We had a fundraiser for elementary there, so I skated for the first time since college. I attempted rollerblading once in college. Quickly stopped that after half a block. So when I got there, my daughter, 3.5, wanted to skate.
How many times did you fall?
Yeah, a lot. No, not too bad. So I was like, well, I'm going to do skates instead of blades. I feel like that'll be easier. I was
Mhm.
wrong. Like roller skates felt really good on the carpet. Once I got on that wood, that is not like a natural motion to roller skate. Like
It's like
rollerblading.
it's like a quad king. You don't want that.
It's weird. Like
It's weird.
the rollerblading is very natural. That's like skating. You know,
Yeah.
I skate. Roller skating was weird. My daughter had one of these like walker things that you use to help.
Yeah.
And this poor little girl was just spinning out in place. Like she was
So
just
yours
moving her
were
legs.
yours were entirely like roller based this weekend. That's what skate world was. You didn't do any ice skating.
No, yeah. Roller
Gotcha.
blades or skates on wood.
Got it.
Like Stranger Things. They even do a Stranger Things night now, apparently.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Bring it back.
People dress up.
Capitalize
whenever
on
the
a
80s
little
music.
bit of that. Yeah.
So I had to get out there and help her, and yeah, instantly fell like on my back. That was a joy. But then once we
Flat
got
back
rocking
bump,
and
yeah.
rolling, it was enjoyable. I don't know if I'll ever do it again. I was very tired after about 3 songs, but it was fun. I was
Right.
surprised how many people were there just skating around. But blades definitely more popular than skates.
Yeah, yes,
Um,
it should be. Yeah.
But yeah,
Last time I skated was Christmas party.
ooh,
Oh,
Sorry,
roller
Michelle.
skate. Yeah. My wife
Sorry,
famously broke her wrist at that
Mhm.
Christmas party.
That could have been
roller
me.
skating.
Holy moly! Yeah,
Little
so
collie
early
scratcher.
early 90s I had a pair of rollerblades because that was like all the rage.
Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, black with neon green wheels. I remember them to this day. I begged and begged for them. Here's the problem when you live in the country: you have
Gravel
nowhere to
roads.
rollerblade. Like they got me a pair, and I rollerbladed in our basement in Quonset. And back then it was like leather. They were just like leather figure skates with wheels on the bottom.
Mhm. Yeah.
So they just cranked on my ankles. I hated them. That was one of the most disappointing things I ever got as a kid. Like, not disappointed that my parents got, but like so blown out of proportion in my mind of how cool they were gonna be versus like how cool they were in reality. Did you guys ever have
Yeah.
like a sweet gift like that where you're like, oh man, you got to get me this. I want nothing else. I will sell everything I have if you get me this. And then you got it and you were like, no, this sucks. Sorry to
Well,
spring this on you.
Yeah, I know. You're kind of like, this is really veering out of hand. I wasn't sure where this was going.
These blades stick in my mind as one of the most
We had
disappointing
like
moments of my
I remember
life.
getting like a Gen 1 laser tag game,
Okay.
and the thing like sucked.
Yeah.
It was like battery powered and is like if I recall right, it's like my brother and I each got like the vest, and then you got a gun, and one of our vests didn't work from the beginning, and
Maybe your aim sucked.
and no, you had to be like right, like pointing the gun at the person's chest, like
You had to murder them,
and then it
It's
would
like
be
a
like,
melee,
"Dee, dee,
laser
dee."
melee.
You got one of the 5 dots left, right? And it was like, and that one sticks out to me. It just like yours, none of my parents' fault. Like they had no idea, but
Yeah.
I just remember it was so clunky and nowhere near accurate. Not what we were thinking at all.
Yeah, that was me in rollerblades, man. I thought I was going to be cruising down the gravel roads at about 25, just heading into town,
Yeah.
grinding on rails, doing half pipes that
And
went
then-
around.
I think that was a movie, right? Grinding.
Grind.
What?
About rollerblading. Yeah.
That was going to be that and the kids from Rad rolling their bikes around. It was going to be a great time, but it never happened, never materialized. And Jeremy, your youth was just pure, simple,
Perfect.
joyous,
No,
zero sadness.
I was thinking most of my gifts were secondhand, so I already knew they sucked before I got them.
Oh, okay. That's fair. Oh, they were all disappointing. Okay. I like that route that you went with.
I know I can't think of anything that pops off like that. Oh,
Oh, that's all right. I got to thinking about that as my thighs were burning rollerblading on Tuesday.
I like that. That's a good
Tuesday.
reflection though, because I definitely had friends that went through that where they're like, gosh, oh, now I need mom and dad to take me into town. And they're like, yeah, we're not taking you into town to go rollerblade, right? Like,
No.
we're doing stuff on the farm.
Yeah, it was foolish on my part. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That
You
was
just got
very-
sucked in. Like, hey man, the Mighty Ducks was the
Pretty big
stuff,
movie.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I have to imagine that was one of the major catalysts for me wanting them. I suppose there was
Skewed-
ads on TV.
knuckle
too, but-
puck. Yeah.
Skewed heavy to the Emilio base, big time.
Who didn't? I mean,
He was a great guy. Big fan. Glad he learned his lesson too. No more drinking and driving.
You're
Because then you'll
gonna have to coach
a
youth
team.
hockey.
yeah. What a punishment. What a punishment.
Lesson learned, and then he becomes a hero again. Minnesota Miracle Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So I mean, lesson learned, drink and drive away, as they say. Do all you want.
Maybe it was just all meant to be.
Yeah. It's divine
God's
intervention.
plan. God's plan.
God plan.
Speaking of movies, I hear there's a Marvel announcement you had to give us, Nick. So something.
Yeah, just before the
Dun.
pod, pretty interesting stuff. I think Ryan
Not
Reynolds
yet,
announced
Jeremy.
on his
Oh,
YouTube channel that Deadpool 3 is going to be a real deal, go live in the MCU now, and so that
What's
was
the
like
date?
first, like, ooh,
Yeah.
September 24.
Ooh, that's a
So
long
2
ways
years,
away.
full 2 years away.
Kind of a bum
Come
deal. I felt like they
on.
busted the first two out in weekends.
Yeah, pretty much. But that's not all, because his
But wait, there's
ongoing
more.
relationship with Hugh Jackman has brought the Jackman out of retirement to play Logan Wolverine one more time.
That's exciting. I wonder.
I think that's really
like,
cool.
Yeah, is it gonna be like multiverse Wolverine, or is he gonna play the Wolverine in the current
Who knows what
world of the Marvel?
timeline,
Yeah,
you know.
it'd be
Check
interesting
it
to
out.
see how they play
Go to
that.
their YouTube. It's only like a 90-second YouTube announcement they did one yesterday and they did one today. And the one today has like last night had like the little cameo of Hugh just walking around behind him. And then I think they had the Deadpool 3. They have like a logo, but then they had like the 3 claw marks to like kind of go by it. And then today they had it both on the couch. It's also all played up for humor, so as they're talking, I think they
Ryan Reynolds is so
overdub.
hot right now.
Yeah,
I do that 2 years out though. God, that's a long time.
the MC, they need something. They're losing their base quickly. It's
Yeah.
like the nerdy factions really speaking out. I think they're, it was like we've talked about before on the pod. I mean, they were bound to have a little let me down after Endgame, and I think it's
Mhm.
just hung on. Between COVID and everything, it's hung on longer than I think they were expecting. Because that's
Yeah.
can you believe that 3.5 years since Endgame?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like I've mentioned before, just oversaturated with the TV shows. For me, the TV shows have kind of ruined the MCU. It's just too much to keep track of. They're good. I've watched episodes, but I just can't get into them.
I think they're and I think the ones I liked Loki. Loki was enjoyable.
Loki was good.
Um,
WandaVision was pretty good.
WandaVision was good.
Hawkeye was
But
okay.
do any of them really like, oh my gosh, that was like the best show?
No, the closest would be Loki for me.
Like,
She
Yeah.
She-Hulk is not. I don't know. I haven't even watched a full episode of that yet.
no, we haven't.
None of them have drawn me in, if I'm gonna
Miss
be honest.
Marvel. I don't think I watched a full one of that.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to what came out like last spring. Oh,
The
Moon
Winter
Knight.
Soldier,
Moon Knight was
Moon
okay.
Knight I watched. That was okay. That was
Then I
intriguing
saw-
too. Like
That was interesting.
yeah, that was good. That might actually beat Loki for me. I don't know.
That
That's
one
right
got
there.
kind of. Didn't that one get a little weird by the end? Like,
Yeah, a little trippy when they're on the boat and with the
Yeah.
hippos and yeah, that got a little weird. But
Yeah, I feel
are
like
we
they
all a little weird?
just need to
that's
lead
fine.
in.
I'm fine being weird, but it was like a little too far off the beaten path and not enough. I don't think they had enough of a connection to the rest of the MCU for that one.
Yeah, it's just like I said, too much. It's too much commitment for me. They just need to lean on Spider-Man and the X-Men and roll with it.
Yeah, they need
That's
to
not the way
hit
I'd
a
go.
home run with the X. They need to bring good X-Men in.
Yeah, then you could have movies for years based on that alone. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's
Well,
we'll
but-
see. We'll see.
Big trump card to be able to play. Getting Hugh Jackman to come back after he said, he was never going to do it again. And he went out on a good note.
Logan was solid.
Very dark. I mean, it's not a fun movie at all.
Yeah, I mean,
It's-
there's not like more than like 30 seconds of feel good in the whole movie of them.
I was reading that they even like cut a scene. I'm pretty sure they said they cut it where it was, it's a really poignant moment. It's like Professor X, he's like Wolverine's helping Professor X onto the toilet and even has to like help him wipe and everything. But I'm like, so all stuff that happens in some, in some situations like with lifespan issues as people get into extended life, but it's maybe a little too real. I don't know, a little too dark. Like you don't need that to hit the, like you got the idea from watching the movie without
Yeah.
scenes like that.
I would
Like, you
agree.
I don't think you need to see Logan wiping Charles Xavier's backside.
Do you think like Professor X ever used his hands to wipe his own butt, or do you think he just used mind powers?
Mind for sure.
Then did he
No,
wash his?
They probably had a
did.
nice. They probably had a nice bidet too.
He's a man of integrity. He
Yeah.
still used the manual process.
Yeah. Now, if you used your telekinesis to wipe yourself, do you have to wash your hands? What's the rules there?
Wow.
Yeah,
Why?
Just being in the bathroom?
Can you explain yourself,
it's
Jeremy?
good etiquette.
It's hands free according to your logic, and he's doing it.
How do you know? We haven't seen a scene on it. We don't know what
Yeah, they
everything
didn't film
that happened.
that. didn't make the final round of cuts.
Come
Do you-
on, man.
Like you guys watch the cartoon? You familiar with the cartoon? The X-Men cartoon?
The X-Men, the
Yeah.
original, yeah.
Or the comic book where he had the floating gold wheelchair thing that he always like moved around in?
Oh, yeah, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think that just was his toilet?
Oh, see, and the more you make, like I don't want to make it real. I don't want to ask these deep questions.
People want to
But
know.
it's life. You're right. It's like somebody
wanna
had to
know.
help him transfer.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Or do you just think
somebody had to help him with his pants because he's
lifted
a
himself out of bed?
paraplegic.
I mean, or do you just think he used his mind for all that stuff?
Maybe, yeah.
No, I don't.
Maybe
Maybe
that's
it's
how he
not a
got
real-
so good with his mind. It's very fine tasks to do all day long.
Yeah, I don't know. This is
I
a
don't
deep.
know.
We gotta.
I don't want to ruin it for you.
You gotta write the
we,
writers.
we can move on. That's
Yeah.
fine. It's time.
It might absorb too much time. We might have to think about that.
Yeah, no, I feel you now. I'm sorry. You got to lead
I
a.
don't even
you
know
lead
how
a
we
talk
segue
here.
out of it. You got us so
Pragmatism.
deep in the sandbox. How do we segue? Because that's a pragmatic view of the movies.
Yeah, right. Were they effective? Were they efficient? I don't know.
Effective or were they efficient? What side of the spectrum did they land on? That's the kind of the question the article wants you to ask.
Yeah, you gotta
Answer.
run a Ron Diaz analysis, I believe is what they call them. So
Ron Diaz.
I
Similar.
forget. There was too many analyses. Analysize.
Yeah.
Analyses. What's the plural? Jeremy.
Analyses.
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 Well, I suppose on that note, let's do our hard segue into
Yeah, I've ruined
So
that
about
for
this
everybody. I'm sorry.
Journal article.
this journal article that hardly anybody's going to care about. So we got to find a way to break
Someone
this
will
down in a
care
way
about it.
that people will care about it. But
Well, the
yeah,
good
title of the
news is the therapy part of our show is the least favorite part of our show for people. So the people,
the public has spoken.
yeah. If you're a
They wish we
therapist and
did
you care
some-
about this part, you'll like this part. If you're like
They wish
everybody
we did
else,
something
skip-
else.
eh,
Yeah.
we gotta have a thing. Like we
Put it
just
in
can't
Yeah.
talk.
2.5x.
We'll throw some sponsorship
fast.
dollars at us, and we don't have to keep being therapists. We'll find other
That's
content.
true.
Like,
I'll do anything.
Blue Chew.
I'll do a Professor X deep dive podcast if I have to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's dumber ones out there.
Are
So
there?
title of this article is from the August 2020 issue of JOSPT, the Journal of Orthopedic Sports Physical Therapy. It's titled "Over Half of Clinical Trials of Mobilization and Manipulation for Patients with Low Back Pain may have limited real-world applicability. A systematic review of 132 clinical trials. And this is written by C. Daniel Maddox and others. So recently published, I thought that was, I think this one caught my eye when the edition landed on my desk. And we've talked about it many times on this pod alone, where I like to see this, and they talk about it too, more of like a synergistic approach where it's not entirely like your typical efficacious trials, your clinical studies, which ironically has very little clinical component to it. So if you're listening at home and you're new to literature and stuff like that, when they talk about clinical studies, often cases it has limited clinical applicability, which is where the pragmatic piece comes in. So it's a big word soup right now going on. But as Casey was talking about, like efficacy refers to like these, what the studies are trying to determine when they're in a very, very closed, I don't know, how'd you guys say, closed and defined situation.
So you'd have a
structured,
very
regimented.
Specific subset. So you might say, hey, we used males from 30 to 40 that had low back pain that came on within the last week. Boom. And that's the only people we care about, right? But in the clinic, right, the people that we see with low back pain all across the spectrum of ages, genders, timeline of how long they're dealing with it.
Yeah.
But
in a vacuum with everything controlled, does it work?
Yes. Yep. And trials rated as like, here's a good explanation when you jump to discussion. I like this little explanation when you jump back here. The trial setting domain skewed heavily toward efficacy. Trials rated as more explanatory were often characterized by non-clinical, highly specialized and or single or limited settings, limited number of clinicians, or highly experienced clinicians. And these factors may not reflect common clinical practice. So again, I think there's a sudden irony here that we talk about clinical trials, but yet there's two clinical components here, right? It's two definitions of clinical. Like the clinic that we work in, all of us do, where we're seeing different patients of different demographics, anthropomorphics, everything like that. And then there's like what you think about as like your higher education clinical trial, which is more your research study population. Whereas the pragmatic type of approach would allow for more generalizability to larger number of clinicians of varying backgrounds. Those trials that were rated as more pragmatic tended to use clinical settings, multiple centers, many different clinicians, and clinicians with a variety of experience and training levels.
Yeah, so that's awesome.
So that's more like the definition of what they're trying to compare to there.
Right. Because you could say, hey, not only do I want to check this manipulation, but I can't just have a PT doing this. I need somebody that's gone through a residency, and I need somebody who's gone through a fellowship, and they need to be super highly trained. So we test this, we test this specific technique, right? But you might go into your clinic and have a new grad being like, well, I saw in the research this technique works, and are you getting the same treatment? Like, right? Does it apply?
Exactly. And the specificity of the treatment I thought was very interesting, because I think one of the studies that they reference in here, one of the clinical, more efficacious studies, they were even getting as specific as saying it was like the side-lying thrust manipulation to the L3 level, right? And I think we've talked about this. There's been studies, there's been studies that come out that show how inaccurate even expert clinicians are. Isn't it inter-rater reliability of being able to identify that third segment or fourth segment or fifth? So, the old
even
L4,
if you
L5 gapping.
If you identify that, is your manipulation only hitting L3, L4, L4, L5, right?
Yeah. That's why somebody just called it the money roll at some point. And they're like, this is where the money's
$1
at.
million dollar.
Yep. Oh. Casey, your thoughts and opinions when we break down this comparison of study types.
Professor Hansen.
Please.
Golden chair.
No, I think it's a cool article, and we can, obviously get into the weeds a little bit on it, but it's something that needs to be addressed in our profession. We've been therapists for long time as a profession, World War II, and I feel like research is still very lacking, right? And it's because we are looking at these things in bubbles and really having nothing to say that in the clinic it works or it doesn't per se. And the article talks about it is most PT research has a pretty high level of bias, and I think that is part of being these like high explanatory articles, because if you're looking to explain something, I think inherently there's always going to be bias. And it talks about it later too, is for us it's hard to blind and sham a lot of what we
blinding and sham, which is what they identify, right? I think it's the first, or at least the first one they lead with. Like the most common risk for bias included a lack of adequate blinding of participants, which we've talked about before. Like, especially when we talk about manual therapy or mobilization, people know if they're going to get it or not to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, even dry needling, ultrasound, all that crap. Like, I think it's hard.
Oh, don't call it crap. That's
all
bias.
that stuff. I think there's
don't
so
lump needling with ultrasound either.
E-stim, whatever you want.
I love it.
A-stim, all that stuff. It's just hard to blind. So I think we do need to do a lot more of these pragmatic trials, because I think they will find in the next 20 years, I think, more valuable for us. But I don't think you can do pragmatic trials without doing explanatory trials first in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I think it'd be nice to blend it, you know, and that I do feel there'd be some, and I know I'll jump all the way to the end on that point quick. But when you look through like limitations of the study, and this really caught my eye again today, reading through it. I mean, there's so many limitations to it, but while we intended to explore the methodology of existing trials in manual therapy for low back pain, we did not evaluate treatment effects, nor did we explore the influence of efficacy or effectiveness-oriented designs and outcomes. Thus, no conclusions can be made regarding the effectiveness of manual therapy for low back pain based on the study's level of pragmatism. Second, we included trials that employed a variety of healthcare practitioners providing manual therapy. Thus, no conclusions can be made related to specific professions. And then third, we only reviewed manual therapy trials that investigated joint moves and or manips. So therefore, no conclusions can be made regarding trial designs to other forms of manual therapy, and they include massage, cupping, drainage, stuff like that. So there's really no conclusions you can really draw from it. And I think one of the other, but it's a good component to consider, I think, because you can't go entirely on this pragmatic view because you can't really prove it, you know, either, or you have no way of like showing the value of what you're actually delivering, because it really opens the door to a lot of excuse making, right?
Correct. And how does a title like this so affect what we talked about last week with idea cults, right?
Go on, King.
Well, and I mentioned that last time too. Like, I think this is such a clickbait title because, like you said, the limitations, and even at the beginning of the title, they said, you know, originally we were going to use the grading of recommendation, assessment, development, evaluation tool to say whether this was effective in clinic, and then they didn't. They were like, nah, that seems like a lot of work. Like, but you kept the title, and I feel like it didn't. It's such
I think, and when I got to the end of the whole end of the article, and you'd be proud of me, Casey, I read the entire thing. I even read methods and results.
Yep. There's things to catch in there.
So when I read back into it, it just shows like the title isn't misleading. I think it's misleading if we come at it with our, again, biases, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just saying they may have limited real world applicability, you know. So they're not trying to prove effectiveness within the study either. They're just saying that over half the 132 clinical trials that they examined for mobilization and manipulation for low back pain patients may have limited real world applicability, you know, because they really ironed it all down and kind of narrowed down that scope. And when you find out, you know, that you're only delivering, you know, some of the other pieces as to why it has limited real world applicability. Let's break that piece down, because like they talk about, they're delivering, usually it's like one clinician. And even if, that one, I don't know how to feel about that one, because I don't think we bounce patients around too much, at least in our practice. I don't think they're bounced to a crazy level. So homogeneity of like the clinician didn't seem like that major of a deal. But what does seem quite different is that a number of these trials, these clinical ones, they were like one and done type of treatments, and specific like one and done, one visit and one intervention. You know, quite specifically, you're getting up on a table and you're giving them like a high velocity thrust mobilization, and then you're sending them on their way, and then you're comparing that to like a low dose ultrasound and seeing which one. It's like, man, what, neither one of these in my mind would be that effective.
Where I would say the homogeneous nature, though, like you said, like, yeah, I might eval a patient, you might eval a patient, but if if we both look at this and we're like, hey man, like, even if we said treatment-based classification, this is a manip patient, right? This is a manip patient through and through. But you, Casey, and myself all have different expertise in manual skills, right? So in terms of, as we treat our own patients, there's going to be probably a gap in what the outcome is, right? And that's where the applicability is. Again, it's tough, because you could say, well, shoot, man, if Casey would have seen that patient instead of Jeremy, there might have been a very different outcome, right? And you could always make that argument, and that's the challenge.
That's the weakness of the pragmatic studies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the argument you could keep making. It can become very circular.
Yeah.
Yeah, you almost have to, we always look at which patients respond best to which interventions. They're trying to always lump our patients in, which some validity to that, I guess. At least you're starting somewhere. But you almost have to do it the other end too, and go, which therapists are going to provide this the best, right? Because I'd agree with you, Jeremy. Especially working with young therapists, you see a wide variety of confidence, especially something like manipulation. Can I go to the clinic then, like you say, and say, all right, everybody in the clinic, if it's neck pain, because you'll hear that.
Cervical manip.
Cervical manip.
Leafy green vegetable.
Everybody, it's shown to be effective. It's like, well, again, pragmatically, if you have a bunch of young clinicians that don't like to manip, well, it's not your treatment. But how many studies are you going to have to do, and how many algorithms am I going to have to run in my brain to say, all right, this is the treatment for me? But I guess that's what we're trying to figure out 60, 70 years later.
I think so. As a solution, if we're looking at this, and this is an imperfect study itself, right? I think we're willing to acknowledge that. They acknowledge that their own limitations. But they do identify, like, because low back, and you have to consider this, because I like this point, low back pain is a heterogeneous condition, right? Patient, clinician, situation specific factors need to be considered. We all know that. And they also included, to keep the study, I guess, somewhat broad. Where was that? I like the things that they did not exclude from it. So let's see here. Because I think it was, they allowed labels such as, they allowed disc pathology, spinal stenosis, and spondylosis to fall within the category of non-specific low back pain, provided that no other exclusion criteria was present. So, which would be a neurologic compromise. And I like that they left that more broad, I think it speaks to the real world application of it versus, they'll, like you were talking about, if you go treatment-based classification, or let's just go back to biomechanical model where you're looking at, like, this person was diagnosed with a fifth set joint dysfunction, so those are the only people that, we applied this type of manipulation to. But again, how do you correct this? I mean, how do we reconcile, like, these two different approaches? Like, do you open up? Is the answer to, like, open up more clinical trials to have, like, multiple clinicians with some latitude on what type of manual therapy intervention they would introduce to that patient, to that population?
Yeah, I think for me, it comes down to, if you're going to be a researcher and you want, like, there should be almost a step that you really need to go with your research. I think, like, the 10 study that we're involved in, they start out very explanatory with TENS, whether it can be effective. Then they went to the second study, which was a little more pragmatic, and now they moved to a full pragmatic research model. Like, I wish more places would do that. And I'm not touting this research is great necessarily on tens, and I'm not like this huge tens guys, but I just like how they've done it. And I wish more places would do it
Replicate
this way.
that. Yeah.
Replicate that instead of just being like, you need more studies, or but it's hard to get how we saw this with this tens research we're involved in. It is hard to get 20, 30 clinics into a trial trained. There's some limitation there from a research standpoint, is how many clinics and how many clinicians do you need to really say it is pragmatic too? They really don't give a number in this article at all. They just said
it's just multiple. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 20? Or is
they use
it
many at times?
is it multiple locations?
Non-specific. Yep.
And then you could argue within the same company, our treatment's all that different, within that. And maybe not, right? Like, maybe there's a general onboarding process, and say, hey, this is our private practice orthopedic track, right? Like, there's challenges that way too, right? So,
yeah, you're going to find different companies are going to have different views on that. I mean, I know we talk about that at work right now, is do we get everybody in the same language? Do we make everybody treat very similar, or do we let people follow their passions and become their own practitioners? I don't know what the right way is, I guess.
Yeah.
I could argue probably either way a little bit.
Yeah, you can.
Yep. You hate to miss out on passion from a therapist, because like we said before, bias can be effective in a positive.
I'd also wonder though, I mean, I think when I came into Big Stone, and this has long since been gone, we've crapped on it to death, but the Ola Grimsby approach that had to be mandated, that you had to do like 3 levels of OLA before you could do anything else. And we're not alone. We're not alone. I remember I did a student internship at Therapeutic Associates in Seattle, and they were NIOP. I mean, that was their approach, and you had to go through NIOP before you were allowed to do anything else. So going back to your point, Casey, I wonder if it was just the way, and you could move, either through grandfathering or just bringing veteran clinicians along to it. I think it could be done to at least have some type of commonality. I still like to believe there's some semblance of best practice out there.
Yeah, there is.
Without totally deviate. Again, they talk about a spectrum of efficacy versus effectiveness. I mean, there's a spectrum of best practice as well, or excuse me, about how much variability you should apply versus what should you just do? As boring as it might seem, but what's tried and true, very well reproducible, has high inter-rater reliability, regardless of who's delivering it, right? I mean, some of that, there should be a marriage between those things, I think.
I agree with you totally. And I hope where the research goes, where we can say both these things have high efficiency and high efficacy, right? And we know some of that stuff, exercise. But again, how general do you need to go? How specific do you need to go? There probably still needs to be more research in that. And we don't want to throw our skills away. We don't want to just say, hey, you have back pain when we've done all these research studies.
Go walk.
Here's the bullets, right?
Yeah.
And your physician just gives it to them and you should be fine. The research says these are the best. I'm torn on it, but I think as a profession, we need to get better at having similar language, similar understanding of where the base is going to be. Somebody comes in, there is best practice that you need to start with, you need to cover your bases and then go from there,
Well, hey, you and I were in a meeting a couple days ago, right? Or was it yesterday? And it's we heard one little sidebar on MFR. Pretty out there, pretty weird. But what else do we hear? Well, it was worth it because one person really likes it now. That's scary to me.
I didn't want to say much. They were already giving me a hard time about how much I don't enjoy it, so I didn't want to keep going down that road. But like that comment
shout out to Brady for calling it out, though. Former guest of the pod. I just have a hard time because there's going to be outliers out there that maybe you're just bored, right? You're so bored with, oh my God, this research-based EBP approach where it's telling me for this post-op rotator cuff to go through this gamut. I say, oh my God, this is so boring, blah, blah, blah.
I've done this 1,000 times.
Right? And then you go and see this thing that's so freaking left field where you're just lit up inside. It gives you that professional, like, giddy up, and you're
I also have emotions in my liver.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, this is incredible.
Trauma. Trauma.
Every patient needs this. I talked about PRI and how that was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Like, it's these are slippery slopes too.
Yeah, and I don't know if we should encourage those slippery slopes, but
no,
I don't know.
That's for a different group meeting.
We're so passive aggressive. We kept our mouths freaking shut. But that's the type of stuff, though. Like, we have to reconcile these things and mature a little bit. We do as a profession. Like you said, we've been around since World War II, but gosh, we're still trying to figure out how to marry the art and the science of what we do.
You know what the crazy thing is, though? Like, I think a unifying factor could be outcomes, right? Like, where do you get somebody and how quick do you get them there?
But whose outcomes do you believe? What outcomes do you trust?
But you know what? You know what is a unifying factor? The people that fly in left field don't believe in outcomes. They don't.
To a point.
They don't believe in outcomes.
There's also people,
they believe in their own outcomes, Jeremy.
They don't. No, they
don't.
Ask
them, they go, my outcomes
talk
are
to
great.
Landy hit me up. He was telling me, he hit me up with a little war story, a leadership war story that he's already experienced, and was just looking for some advice. And he made, when I told him, I said, I think you made a little bit of a mistake by talking about, touting, a little bit of new sheriff in town, kind of like, what I'm going to do, what I'm going to encourage us all to do is more evidence-based outcome, like all of these amazing outcomes in Marshall. And I told him, I'm like, man, that's a soft subject, tender subject for some people in the company, because they still like to live in bullshit excuse land. Where
what a wonderful place.
Yeah.
No shit, right? You don't ever have to prove yourself.
You're always right there.
You're always right. And they're always wrong. If somebody else is hovering around, if somebody else is hovering around the 92nd percentile, it's like, what are they doing wrong? What are they doing? Why are they doing wrong? And I've sat in friggin' senior leader meetings where people have that type of mentality. Like, well, I'm not sure if they're administering correctly, right? And it's like, fuck you. Like, just step up, and make yourself better. Stop trying to crap all over somebody else for being great at what they're doing.
Or you'd realize that at a certain point, it's like, if you just help people live their life better, your photo scores are going to go up.
Yeah.
If you're not worried about blowing up a balloon, if you're not worried about freaking unwinding.
What happens if they're a performing clown, Jeremy?
Well,
that's what they do for a living.
They are
maybe.
clowns.
But no, I mean, that gets crappy for me too. But it's like, again, and there's a certain point where you just got to be like, listen, there is best practice, right? And like, if we can't accept that, like, maybe that's an acceptable loss, right? Like, maybe if we're not like, hey, we're not gonna pay for an MFR course, and somebody's like, well, fine, I'll go somewhere else that will pay for it. Maybe we're better for that, right?
Right.
Maybe we're better for that, right?
I think so. I mean, and then you're not unique to that. How many leadership classes have we taken where it's like energy bus, energy vampires? These people aren't, moving your organization the right way. If they're not rolling the boat the right way, it's okay to like find them another seat on a different bus, whatever, adage you want to use. But for crying out loud, it's like we get caught. We talked about this. So now we talk about outcomes, like treatment philosophies. It has a common thread with, like, we met about incentives, right? And those structures. It's like, well, let's not let's not really listen to high performers. Let's make excuses as to why those high performers are they're just doing what they should do, and then maybe they're skewing them.
If we can't include the low performers, then we shouldn't reward the high performers, right?
And I think, but we all come from like, I do think it comes from like a little bit of your, like, I believe in a meritocracy. This came, other stuff, and there's other stuff in leadership too that just came up today that I'm kind of hot about, where it's like, wait, I don't know, Jason brought up that somebody was upset that some other ops leader, I have no idea who it was. I don't think.
Don't get yourself in trouble here, Nick.
We're free. This is my time. This is my time.
Okay.
Free country.
I can edit it out whenever. Regret it later. Go on.
I don't think anybody up there listens to the pod.
Yeah, they're not supportive. I get it. But go on.
But no, it was like somebody else at ops, some other ops leader was questioning like the number of titles of managers and supervisors and specialists that are placed on administrative employees. And he brought that to Chris Pay and myself and wanted to get our thoughts on it. And I just sat back and listened because sometimes it's fun to do. And when I finally gave my talk, I was like, well, why? And the pushback, so there's a pushback here as to like, well, maybe they should just mind their own business, right? Trust, right? Trust. And I'm like, okay, but I also believe in a meritocracy where if you're going to slap labels on people and it's worth it, by all means, you should be able to defend that. You should be able to explain yourself, defend it, and then tell that person to go piss off if it has merit. Now, if it doesn't, maybe you got to fact check yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe you got to wonder, why are we doing this? Because, and I was basically just pigtailing off of something I think Ms. Pam said, like, God, we have so many structures and hoops and processes to follow to anoint anybody, and they have to manage X number of FTE in order to be considered like a manager or as a coordinator, and do annual reviews and one-on-ones and all this stuff, manage performance, so why would you arbitrarily just slap titles on other people? So, I mean, so my point with all this is like, where you need some type of grounding, right? You need some type of center, some anchor. And in clinically, it's like some level of evidence-based practice, because you can't just live in the gray.
Don't poop on my truth, man. It's my truth. Stay away from it.
That doesn't exist. That's shit. It's just truth.
You know what they said in the 90s. The truth is out there.
And
he's like, Casey's like, we gotta segue out of this.
I've never sweat so much on this shoot.
He's trying to save us all.
Really? You're not really nervous, are you?
No,
you
I
think
don't
somebody's
care.
gonna complain?
Hey guys,
what are you gonna do? Make me sell my business?
if you get in trouble out west, come out east, y'all.
Oh,
we'll have some fun. Let's go.
We're in.
All right.
I'll open up a Casey's next to your clinic. We already talked about that.
Breakfast pizza. Oh man.
Casey,
and I don't think I have to
Casey's.
Pay Casey's. I'll just open up my own thing based on my name. You can't copyright my name.
But yeah, what if we did the same exact logo?
What if they did though?
In blue.
Yeah, apparently that can happen, because that happened to Colonel Sanders. I don't know if you guys know that. Like,
yeah,
he was KFC, and then like somebody bought KFC from him, and then he tried to go do like his own Colonel Sanders thing, and they were like, "Sorry, dude, we own your name."
Well, isn't that the famous story of David Graston?
Yes.
Like he signed his name away. So that's why so if you read Sastum, yep, it's always Jeremy, we talked about that. If you
they had his name,
read their literature, it's just David. David who? David did this, and David set out to create a new. He's like an enigma.
He didn't want to use surgical stainless steel. He wanted to use highly effective polycarbonate, purple polycarbonate.
Yeah, but he can't use his last name anymore because he was such a believer in that stuff.
Yeah,
they signed it that he licensed out his last name.
Yeah, so I probably couldn't open a Casey's, but I'd be willing to franchise one next to you, Jeremy. Is there room to build just onto your clinic? Can I just put a gas station on there?
We might have to check into zoning, but that'd be tough sledding. We got like 17 gas stations in our town. But
you got that nice Westco not far away.
Yeah, it is. And they have
good donuts.
How's the breakfast pizza sitch?
It's pretty good, but it's only, sausage and gravy. So the nacho
There's
cheese.
a market, man. There's a market.
Yeah. So
Told you.
Get you some. Get you some.
Well, I'll
All
let you
right.
know how this pans out once we get this thing posted.
then we don't
Let me
then
go.
we don't have to worry about treatment standardization. We'll just worry about selling lots of pizzas.
Yeah, I know what best
I like
practice is
that. Wouldn't it
there.
be easy sometimes?
Bacon and egg, nacho cheese breakfast pizza. That's best practice.
Just run a restaurant. Then people know you got good food, you sell out.
Yep. You know your results right away. I don't have to wait 9 months for somebody to pay me.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh,
Oh, can I get in trouble for saying that? I don't know.
no, I
Let's
don't,
know.
let's move
I don't
on.
think we're gonna get in trouble for any of this.
Oh.
All right. Top
Who's gonna
five.
yell at us? Our wives? My mom.
Maybe, yeah. My friend
I did
Sam.
talk to my mom today, and she did say to tell you, Nick, to be nicer to me. She says you're too mean to me.
I don't believe she said that.
That's true. I talked to her today. She said he
What?
was really picking on you about your insecurities. I said, I know.
I know.
Sorry,
it made
Casey's mom.
me even more insecure.
Yeah, right. Like I feel worse about myself. So
You went and told this
Vicious
story
cycle.
on her pod.
Vicious-
You went to your
she
mom
didn't
about
even
this?
listen. I just told on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put her jeepers creepers.
Oh,
All right.
hey, you're okay. People like it.
Check-
Other than my
check-
mom, everybody else
Check
likes
yourself, Doling. Check yourself.
Check my privilege.
that. Yeah, you don't want Wanda coming after you, son.
It's just my truth. It's my truth about
It's
you.
It's okay. I like it. I enjoy it. That's better banter, anyways. But
Yeah.
let's move on to our top
When
five.
I want, if
go
they
on.
can comment, leave some comments or suggestions on how I can treat you better.
Yeah, that's the thing. Nobody
don't-
ever puts anything out into the real verse about
I
how
don't
happy
want
or
to be in
sad
an
they are about
abusive
this.
relationship with you.
is that the real verse?
The real verse.
Oh, all right.
Isn't that what they call it? Reality? The real verse?
No?
Can I coin
Is
that? Can I-
Facebook reality?
No, that's meta.
Trademark it.
That's the metaverse. It's
Meta
the real verse.
verse.
I don't
Is that the metaverse though?
People have tuned
It's
us out
meta.
now. If you were
Yeah.
listening on your drive,
I'm so
I'm
confused.
sorry.
you pushed that. You pushed.
I've tried to move on to
Remove
top
download.
5 TV shows
Well,
from
who's
the
going?
1990s.
Who's going first?
Jeremy.
Top five TV shows from the 1990s.
Yes, that's better. Get it,
One
Nick.
little-
Pump it back
one
up.
decade. Yeah. So,
Great decade.
not too much to explain here, just what our favorite shows were from the 1990s. We all had, I think we had a little bit different criteria in how we got here, but it should be a
Mhm.
fun little back and forth banter. I'm interested to see how much overlap we have because we all
Zero.
acknowledge there's a lot of shows. Ooh. All right, well, take us away, big boy.
Yeah, you'd think your list is so good. So
I don't.
You've got deep cuts.
No, so my number 5 does not really hit as hard on IMDb as it did in my heart.
Okay.
So this show began in 1993, ran 8 full seasons through 2001, 5.5 out of 10 on IMDb.
Okay. You weren't a kid.
This show, we talked about the different viewpoints of it. This was like what mattered to me growing up. So Saturday night we had this little family kind of tradition, sitting down and watching some TV shows. So down there was Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and shortly following was Walker, Texas Ranger.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Heck
that
of a
was
show.
So it's
that was
Walker
something
or
I
is
always-
it Dr. Quinn?
no, it's Walker. You know what?
We were a
The
Dr.
sad-
Quinn family, Nick.
The sad thing is Dr. Quinn probably hits harder on IMDb than Walker, Texas Ranger does.
Sure.
But
Sure.
Walker and Trevette just, going around in his Dodge Ram, just solving crimes, for the Texas Rangers. Every once in a while, you get to see him. Gosh, he was probably like 80 at that point.
He's
Doing
82
roundhouse
now.
kicks.
It's kind of
No,
crazy.
he's not. He's
He's 82.
12.
Oh, Chuck Norris?
Yeah, he's at
I
least
thought
112.
82. Right? Man, nope.
He looks the
it
same
up.
as. All right.
Total.
Not gonna
You
argue.
buy a total gym. We'll see how you look like when you're 80.
Let's go.
Now
Well,
that's
yeah.
best practice.
So we'd
Oh.
air pop some popcorn and watch some Texas Rangers. So That's my number 5.
That was a Friday. You said Friday night, right?
Saturday night, I believe.
Saturday night. Oh,
Because on
Mhm.
Friday night we were watching TGIF.
Yeah, of course.
T-
Dr. Quinn's like a 6'8", Jeremy. You guys should have been spending more time on that show.
Well, we watched that
Oh.
too.
Yeah.
Sully, Dr. Quinn. I mean, it's good.
Yeah, that show jumped the shark for me when Sully put bullets in the side of the cabin and then hit him with his axe to shoot people.
His hatchet.
Yeah, whatever.
There's a hatchet.
Hatchet.
Okay. It's hatchet. Either way, that doesn't make bullets shoot through wood.
It does if you hit it hard enough.
Oh, it doesn't.
Yeah. How do you
Yes,
know?
it
How
does,
many
man.
times have you done it, Casey?
I've tried to
Mr.
reproduce
Know-it-all.
that thousands of times since I saw that.
Ah!
Wanda,
Fail.
tell your baby boy,
Ah!
keep his mouth shut. Keep his lies out his mouth.
You're pushing limits with Wanda right now. Cool it.
Cool head.
I have to.
Well,
deal
if we
with
ever
that.
met face to face, we'd get along just fine.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good choice though, Jeremy.
Very good choice,
I'll still
Jeremy.
watch that thing in syndication when it comes on.
Thank you.
It holds a
Right.
very similar spot to Nash Bridges for me. They were like
Nash
kind of the
Bridges.
same show.
Yeah, Don Johnson. Yeah, he's pretty cool. Well, I could go next and save Casey for last. And
Ooh, I like that.
my number 5, a little bit of a spin-off here. Excuse me. A spin-off show ran from 1989, fall of
Whoa.
89 into 98 though. So
I don't
Oh,
think
definitely
that's
nice.
that's my number 4. I know what you're gonna say.
You guys are doing.
Oh man,
I
shows
know
that
you're
started
gonna
in the
say.
80s.
I learned a
That's
lot of life
disqualified.
lessons
Did
from this
I?
family.
Disqualified. I
TGI.
don't like it.
What? I can't even. Jesus Christ, Wanda, slap your boy around. Get him to just shut his yapper.
You guys.
Because coming in at number 5 was the Winslow family.
Yes.
Family
Did I do
Matters.
that?
Steve Urkel, Stefan Urkel, Carl Winslow.
Yes.
Oh man, Chicago. Like, it felt like Chicago was like a big deal in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like that Perfect Strange, because this is a spinoff of Perfect Strangers. Carl Winslow, I believe, was like a security
Oh, yeah.
guard in their office building, or maybe a police officer there. But
Perfect Strangers was a banger.
I didn't know
perfect,
that.
yeah, yep. If it had more years in the 90s, definitely would have been a year. But it's Family Matters for me, number 5. Man, just great stuff. You had Steve always chasing after Laura and never really being able to get her. I mean, sweet little side story there, and you could always count on the audience. Great audience reaction, to everything. Like, oh. And then
Aw.
and there'd be that inevitable moment every few episodes where Steve, I love you, Laura, and I wish you love me back. In the crowd, and it was just
Shut
really good
up,
stuff, man.
Steve.
And then cue humor or whatever.
Yeah,
So
right.
awesome show. Yeah.
Yeah, great show. Now, I would like to say my piece on this. When we did top shows of the 2000s, we weren't allowed to pick shows that started in the 90s. I thought that was
Was
the
that
rule.
true?
Yeah. I thought
Yeah,
we had
we
to pick.
Remember that?
No,
didn't you
because
go with, you had Simpsons on yours?
Yeah.
no,
You
that
did.
was for favorite animated shows, not favorite shows of the 2000s.
We done it. We did animated shows.
For sure. Growing up.
Did we?
Yeah, 100%.
Favorite cartoons growing up.
Yeah, favorite cartoons growing up.
Oh yeah. Favorite cartoons growing up.
Because in the
Yeah.
2000s, I asked about like, hey, could I do like Friends? And you were like, no, that started in the 90s. So
Ooh.
Well, okay. It should be predominantly in your decade. Okay, so when I looked this up, it debuted in September. So this September of '89. So it really only spent like three and a half months in the '80s, and then a whole 8 years plus in the '90s.
because there's a monster banger of a show I did not include on my list because it started in '89.
Well, you could
Isn't
have
that
clarified.
crazy?
You could have reached out. You could have asked these questions. You could have brought
Communicate, man.
them. Communicate.
We set the boundaries last time we did this. I didn't know they
That was a
changed all the
different,
time.
totally different list.
33 years ago. 33 years ago.
Two digits were different. Well, one digit was
Needs to be
different than that. We switched the 9 to a 0.
You could have asked for clarity. That's
Okay,
all you
that's-
had to do.
all
'Cause
right.
I have one more that began in the '80s as well.
Yeah.
So
Let's asterisk the hell out of this list. I just
fine,
want
you can
everybody
put
to
your
know.
asterisks on there.
I will. My number.
Go
my
back to
number,
Maddox and tell all your boys, tell your mom, like Nick's list sucks.
Because my number 5 predominantly takes place in the 2000s. It had 1 year in the 90s, but the show was a banger. From 1999 to 2007, IMDb, sorry, Jeremy, 9.2.
Wow.
Yes, it was The Sopranos. Definitely just changed television. I gotta say, it still's awesome show. The characters in that were great. The story, the plot. Who knew a sanitation guy could have so much money? Nobody asked those questions. But I just think Tony Soprano, that character, is just one of the best TV characters of all time. He can be absolutely just one of the worst human beings, but there's just something so likable about him. His cast of crew around him were it's cool. A lot of them were real gangsters, real mafia guys. So it's a really enjoyable thing. And I will say my list is maybe a little different from your guys, where I just kind of went with best shows that started in the 90s that are still good today versus shows I enjoyed at the time. Because The Sopranos has held strong through the years. Still a great show.
So 1/7 of its run was in the 90s.
I just followed the rules we set forth in previous episodes. So go on.
I think that it also included had to predominantly take place in the decade in which you were defining.
That was never part of that rule. But go on.
But I think it was. I want to look back on that. I have all the data.
Yeah. So now I will say all my favorite shows of the 2000s were predominantly in the 2000s. But
well, Jeremy, take us away with number 4, please.
I can make this quick because my number 4 was also Family Matters.
Guys.
I didn't think that would make your list, Nick. Really didn't. So I'm surprised.
I don't see color, Jeremy.
But
had it only started in 1990, it probably would have been on my list too.
Whatever. Don't try to save face now.
You guys said you hated Stefan. I thought Stefan was sweet, but
I couldn't stand him.
He wasn't as cool as Steve.
There's nothing redeeming about him. Even as a child, I realized that they were just trying to give Steve Urkel's actor a chance to not be a dork.
Jaleel.
Save his image. Yeah. Jaleel.
Jaleel. Yeah.
Go on, Jeremy, though. You like Stefan?
No, he was good. But there's always like these good family little lessons in there too.
Yeah.
Just actually a number of these you just felt like you grew up with, and they might not have been the same specific things that you were going through, but you could just glean pearls of wisdom from each of these shows.
Yeah. Whole lot of that. That's what TGIF was about, man.
Yeah. Just wholesome family shows.
They weren't killing people and throwing them in
day by
dumpsters,
day,
killing their nephews.
I was like 17. I was 17 when Sopranos came out. Give me a break. That's what I enjoyed.
Step by Step was on my short list, but it didn't.
Same here.
Yeah, Full House. I mean,
Step by
Full House
Step
is on my short list too. So,
yeah.
Full
House would have spent more time.
Full
House would have spent more time in the 90s. It probably would have made mine. Yeah. Step by Step, man. That was a banger too. Patrick Duffy.
That early 90s TGIF was hot. Yeah. Boy Meets World, Hang of Mr. Cooper.
Yeah.
But I'm moving away from TGIF on my number 4.
Brag about it.
More of a mature comedy. One that I watched in passing. Yet another spinoff that Michelle and I got reacquainted with, but it had when Netflix picked up its entire catalog a few years back, and we just kind of started hammering out some episodes. And that would be from 1993 to its finale in 2004. So still 7 years. We're in the 90s. It would be Frasier, Dr. Frasier Crane, phenomenal ensemble cast.
Never seen it.
What?
Oh man, you got to watch. That's a short list for me. That was like number 6.
Yeah, it's so good. It's like, I would say this, Casey. It was one of the absolute best shows. We watch like after the kids go to bed. With no commercials, it's like 22 minutes an episode. Mm-hmm. I could get through one for sure, and then probably just doze off, so relaxed during the second one. I loved it.
His voice is so good.
Yes,
Kelsey Grammer.
Yes. Oh. Kelsey Grammer is like crazy talented too.
Yeah, I think that show
was great.
Yeah, that show's so cool because you could take a character like Frasier and Niles, which are completely unattached to most people watching that show. I mean, these rich, very intelligent guys that were so
Affluent men, yes.
so snooty, and like you just enjoyed it. Like they made these characters that should be unlikable, and they weren't at all. Like it was just fun to watch, and
Yeah.
even though
And
you
they're
couldn't relate to him at all,
But you could relate.
still
I
relate
think
to him, right?
we could relate to his dad though.
Yeah,
And the dad was always there to have like some zinger, some quip, you know, and that was awesome. So
but still too, even these affluent guys, like when you broke it down, it was like, well, they kind of run into the same neurotic crap we have, same problems we have, you know.
because he's always, yeah, you're right. There's like a common theme, I think, throughout the show that Frasier should have it all together, right? Because he's this famous psychiatrist and author, and he's giving out all this advice, but he doesn't have his life together, right? And that's like the bada bing of it all, you know.
Bada boom.
Great show.
So,
Jeremy, watch it.
I'll try.
100%.
I don't know what I wish I knew what streaming platform it was on now.
Peacock, I would assume, right?
Oh yeah,
the
you're
NBC
right.
show.
NBC, yeah. All right, Case. What's your number 4 from like 2009 to like?
Yeah, you're gonna hate this. From 1993 to 2015, IMDb score 6.9. I would say this show like defined me as far as what's funny and how you interact with people. Still to this day, love it. If I watch highlights and things on YouTube, it was actually The Late Show with David Letterman.
Oh, you went with a talk show.
Yeah, and it's because not many good ones started in the 90s. But the thing was, we didn't get NBC, we didn't really get the Arsenio stuff. We didn't get Carson. We didn't get Leno. We didn't get Letterman. And I remember as a kid, so I'm 9 right now, they advertised the heck out of Letterman coming to CBS because this was the first time CBS really was going to have late night talk show in like 20 years. Merv Griffith in the end of the 70s had a talk show, and then they did the Pat Sajak show for like 1 year. But other than that, they'd kind of given up on late night. So it was just this huge event for them. And like, I never stayed up that late to watch TV, but advertising got me. And there's just something about Letterman, you know, he could joke with people. He could give people a hard time, but like, he felt genuine, you know, it wasn't like he was necessarily always, he had a character, you knew the Letterman character, but at the same time, like underneath it all, you felt like he really cared about people. I still love watching his interviews on his Netflix show he does. I love the skits, the characters he had. It was just fun. It was fun for me. I just enjoy Letterman. He's still probably one of my favorite interviewers, if not my favorite interviewer. So I emulate a lot of how I interact with people, probably based on that.
I like both him and Leno. I thought we didn't get, until I got like later into high school, we didn't have those channels. So we got old satellite dish, and then it was kind of nice to be able to swap back and forth. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Leno always seemed a little more polished, a little more scripted, kind of, you know, his thing. Where Letterman always just had the, you know, the weird expressions, and his guests were always over the top, and you know, I don't know.
And he had famously, I think he had a bunch of guests. I think you could YouTube it where there's like clips or montages of guests that he didn't like at all.
Yeah.
And they get into like these little spats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Pretty real. Yeah.
Yeah, he had some real moments on there. Like I said, he didn't agree with all his guests, and it's good. I remember lots of good episodes of that. It's
integrity right there. Just bring him on and just grill him.
Not so much. Well, easy, Jeremy. He didn't have a lot of marital integrity, but
yeah. You know, another thing that like misses the mark for me a little bit. I don't think I've ever watched in my whole life a full late night TV show. Mm-hmm. Never got into Fallon. Never got into Letterman. You know,
you're missing Conan.
Yeah, I would say 93 to 97 was Letterman for me. 97 to 2003 was Conan.
Yeah, Conan. I never watched anything really steady until Conan, and he just took it to like this whole other level. Like he had the best skits. He had the best. You talk about genuine, I don't know, interactions with people. He felt the most real out of anybody. You know, I loved it. I still have great memories of Conan O'Brien.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeremy. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is a series from TGIF again. Weird. It's about the only thing we had. 93 to
It shapes the
2000.
man you are. You're a good man. You're not sick of your mom on me.
8.1 out of 10. Boy Meets
family
World.
values.
Corey and Topanga. Sean and what was his brother's name? Eric. And then I just always remember him going, Feeney!
Mr. Feeney, man. So full.
Yeah, Mr. Feeney just dropping knowledge bombs too. No, it's a good show. I mean, that I can't say that I started watching it right in '93, but I mean that'd be right in that wheelhouse where you're like, oh, it's gonna be on TGIF, right? So yeah, I'm gonna have to go revisit it. I haven't seen a show in 20 years, but that's one that came right to the
Girl Meets World.
Really?
Is it still on?
No, I think that only lasted maybe like 3 seasons, but
they brought back the whole cast, right?
Yep.
Really?
Yep. Corey and Topanga are married. It's about their daughter.
Huh, cool. Yeah, I haven't seen a episode in forever, but that immediately was when I saw the list, I was like, that was one that came top of mind. So that's my number 3.
Definitely has some, and it's a show that I remember at the time, like everybody kind of watched, but it seems to have I think as our generation's all grown up and aged, I think we look back on it a hell of a lot more fondly. I think it's aged super well.
Yeah.
Compared to a lot of other shows. My number 3, going back to the Fox network, and I was explaining this to my beautiful wife, Michelle, that Thursday nights on Fox were pretty sweet for quite a while in the mid 90s. Started with The Simpsons, and then it would go right into Martin, which is my number.
There you go.
And what's up? Man, I thought Martin Lawrence, it ran from 92 to 97, so a little short window there. But I love the whole cast. You got to know the characters. They all had their own little nuances, and they had their own little characterization personas, and then you had Martin playing 4, 5, 6 different characters, at different points in time. But just a fun show. Really, when you look back at it too, what's kind of miraculous is the way I remember it. When you go back, it really took place in 2 different. All they had were 2 different sets, because I think it was super low budget. It was his apartment, and then it was the radio studio, and that was 95% of all the filming.
Yeah, I think sometimes they had the hallway outside of his apartment every once in a while.
When Shaniqua would come by.
Yeah,
Shanae, right?
Yeah,
he also played Shanae.
Shaniqua.
I watched that show a lot.
Shaniqua don't live here
the
no
long
more.
nails and the hair. What you doing? What's going on in there? He was so freaking funny. This obviously led into a pretty massive 2-year infatuation that I had with the movie Bad Boys. I wanted to be like him and Will Smith, but no, that's my number 3, Martin, Fox Network, 92 to 97.
Yeah, that was a good time. Yeah, like you said, Simpsons, In Living Color, Martin, and what was the one with was it Queen Latifah? Or the 3 girls
Living Single.
Living Single.
Oh
yeah.
Living Single.
Yeah, that was a banger lineup there for 2
it was.
years.
I would watch Little Living Single, but obviously it's a white boy in rural North Dakota is going to have a hard time connecting with those same stories. Somehow I could connect with Martin.
Yeah, I was gonna say In Living Color, Martin, Living Single. Again, yeah, the same thing. White boy, farm boy.
Well,
I enjoyed
they're
them.
more. I think those other ones are worse. Living Color was just skits. And it was funny. It was very groundbreaking, I think, at the time. Living Single, I think, was more mature
towards Jim Carrey of that cast, but
but then also Damon Wayans could do it all, but yeah, whereas I think Living Single was more mature, definitely had a more serious storyline to it, and about women trying to find their way. So that's my number 3, Martin.
What was the order? Oh, it's me. Okay.
Yeah, it's you.
Oh, okay.
Where am I? So my show runs from 1997 to 2003, IMDb 8.3. It's a little non-network show that I really watched a lot with my mom. It was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Still enjoy that show. Man, there is some cool storylines. If you guys have ever watched the show, There's some
Not going to.
pretty neat episodes. They touched on some pretty big stuff on that show. Obviously the first season was very campy. School sucks, there's demons, monsters, but after that it gets pretty intense. With some of the storylines, even to the point where her mom gets, I think season 5, has brain cancer, and they do surgery on her, remove the tumor. Everything's fine and dandy, and Buffy goes down the next morning, her mom's dead on the couch from an aneurysm.
Whoa.
Really, really
deep.
powerful episode when you think of like all the crap they go through.
Yeah.
Maybe that's season 4, one of those seasons though, but it's super powerful. Like we survived death so many times, and then a brain aneurysm killed my mom. And her friends don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to console her. There's nothing you can do when you're one of the most powerful people in the world, and you can't save your own mom. Pretty powerful. There's another episode where one of the villains that historically was really crappy villain, one of those comedy effect villains, always failed, finally got tired of failing, so he takes a gun and tries to do a drive-by and ends up killing one of the characters by shooting him with a gun again. Just very straightforward, realistic. And then one of the other characters goes crazy and murders this guy with her powers, one of the very passive characters. And that
I'm
leads to
gonna
her
run this all
being,
by my wife, who's a huge Buffy fan.
yeah, it leads to her becoming one of the bigger villains of the show. So just cool stuff, really interesting topics. They had a lot of interesting episodes just based on, they were one of the first to do like a musical episode based on a demon that would only allow you to sing. They had another episode where the demons took away people's ability to talk, so the whole episode's silent. No soundtrack, nothing. Do a lot of cool grunge music through there.
Was Joss Whedon the showrunner for that?
He was, yep.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's got some questionable stuff behind him on that cast, but yeah, just lots of cool storylines as it goes on. I think at the end of season 5, she kills herself to save everybody, and then she's gone for like a year or half a year, and then they use a spell to bring her back for that season. And she struggles with depression quite profoundly that season because she was in heaven. They thought they were saving her from hell, but they pulled her out of heaven to bring her back. With her mom being happy, time of her life, everything, she had sacrificed herself to save the world, went out on top, and they pulled her back. She did a ton of self-destructive behavior that season, drugs, sex, rock and roll, all that stuff, just because you're so depressed. So touched on some cool stuff. It's great show. I know you guys seem to giggle about it, but I would give it a chance. There's some very cool.
I'm giggling only because 2 hours ago my wife told me I should have Buffy on there because she's a massive fan.
She's right.
She's correct.
Mr. Jump to conclusions.
Saw that look on your face.
I had a dog named Buffy.
All right.
My mom named it, I think, but it wasn't named after the show, but I could never live that down.
I enjoyed the movie quite a bit.
So the TV show is probably 1,000 times better than the movie.
I've heard that too. But it didn't have Luke Perry and Christy Swanson. Christy Swanson was all I needed.
You're not wrong. No. And Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah, it did. Paul Rubens. Yep. Yeah, good cast, actually. Great cast.
Terrible movie, but
Ben Affleck, he started making a little basketball player role. Jeremy, we're on to the top twos.
Number 2. This is a 7.9 out of 10 for me.
You guys
ran
were
from, I believe, 90 to 96.
In the 90s.
All in the 90s. Well,
all in the 90s. I think most of mine have been outside of Family Matters. So.
Yeah, really questionable choice.
Well, hey, Buffy went into the 2000s, so come on.
We're allowed to go out of the 2000s. That was never a rule.
Oh, you got to stay in. You just can't. All right.
Yes.
I think you're trying to arbitrate the rules now in hindsight. Go ahead.
West Philadelphia, born and raised. Playground was where he spent most of his days. Man, that was Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Such a fun show. Will Smith was like the epitome at that time to me, like the epitome of cool, right? Like, and he always had some fresh J's on, like great style, comedic effect, just so laid back, funny. And then that, just that interaction of him being like kind of this normal kid, or maybe even from tougher circumstances, just tossed into Bel Air, where you have the uppity interactions with with Hillary and Alfonso and Joffrey. But and just ultimately, again, super fun show. Again, I feel like they did a great job, along with a lot of like the 90s sitcoms. Like they always pulled in some type of social issue or family issue that you felt like semi affected by, or whether in your own life or just current events, and kind of helped you walk through it. So that's my number 2, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Great choice. I mean, YouTube the clip where he's talking with Uncle Phil and he's like talking about his dad and all disappointed. It's like, why didn't he want me?
Super sad scene for sure.
Yeah.
I think I missed the boat on that show for whatever reason. We didn't have NBC, and by the time it was on, it was like older. They're in college and stuff. I just think I missed the boat on it. But
yeah,
it was definitely it was on my short list. It was on my short list. Well, my number 2 has been said. Jeremy, you did a lot of great explanation. Jeremy and I have overlapped quite a bit now. It ran from 93 to 2000. It is Boy Meets World.
Yeah.
And, just a great, again, like I said before, I'm not going to belabor it, but man, a lot of good messages, and I think it's aged really, really well. And I think the cast was very eclectic. Did a great job. Again, that's kind of a common theme with all mine too. It's not just like one person necessarily dominating, but yeah, the whole cast, like, they were very likable and you could relate to them, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, I felt like more of like a Sean, trying to be a bad boy at times, but, but a lot of relatable stuff there. Sean definitely had more of that. And I think that was the interesting piece of it, because Corey had pretty much the straightforward nuclear family type upbringing, and Sean definitely had the broken home type.
Great thing. Hair too.
Great hair.
Great
hair.
Just a heartthrob for sure.
Yeah, good stuff. Good date. There was a lot of daydream sequences in that show too. And that kind of appealed to me too, especially when you're going through adolescence and stuff like that. Something you can relate to. So, otherwise, Jeremy, you nailed it. Awesome stuff. That's my number 2, Boy Meets World.
Yeah, there were some pretty tough scenes to watch when like Sean and his dad would be like just absolutely annihilated drunk, and he'd have to deal with them. I remember a few of those episodes.
Yeah.
There was some tough stuff there. I remember the episode too when Corey's real life brother Fred Savage was on as a college professor. You guys remember that episode? And he was sexually harassing the girls and they got in the fight. And he was going to get him kicked out of college. That was a pretty powerful episode too. Sticks with me.
A lot of issues. I mean, we're talking about this. They weren't afraid to tackle issues.
Yeah, it was a good show. It was definitely on my short list as well. My number 2 ran from 1997 to the present. 8.7 on IMDb, and that'd be South Park. Still a great show. I enjoy it. I enjoyed it in the 90s, enjoyed it in the 2000s, enjoyed it in the 2010s, enjoyed it in 2020s.
I still do.
Yeah, so just cool. They pick on everybody. I remember watching the debut episode when it came out. There was such a big talk about it, and like that was on because I was a Beavis and Butthead guy. I was kind of used to that crude humor. And that first episode when they're like kicking the baby and they're talking about being a dildo and like the alien shoving probes up Cartman's butt, like that was so beyond anything like I had in my mind of what like a funny show was. And then it just grew, from this very crude humor, cardboard cutout thing to what it is now, where it's just very clever, throw an episode out every week and very thumb on the pulse. So topical, what they built from those early couple seasons is just phenomenal. So that's my number 2, South Park.
Yeah, 100% on my short list. And I came down to it. It's like, man, I don't know where to put it, because I can't think of it as a 90s show, even though it obviously blew me away and I was hooked right away when I was, a late teen. But yeah, like you said, I mean, they have 23 more seasons or 23 more years like after that. So
yeah,
I think
best
their
seasons
best
were
stuff
later.
were coming on. Yeah. And they still have some stuff that just works, and just it's crazy.
There's streaming wars stuff that they have going on, like on Peacock. It's so funny.
Yeah, I mean,
so clever.
It's so sharp. It just is, you know. And I think the bringing back of Man Bear Pig and those, I mean, everything that it's supposed to represent. I mean, it's just so freaking brilliant.
Yeah.
You know?
So.
And you talk about a pragmatic approach on life. I mean, I love how they're so centrist.
Yeah, they rip on everything.
Yeah, and unlike The Simpsons, that I feel has progressively gotten worse over the last 30 some years, I feel like South Park's progressively gotten better. So
they still have their like core audience though that bitches about Peak with Scott Tenorman must die, right? And stuff like that. But I disagree with that. I think they've really gotten better. Go ahead, Jeremy. We're on to the big boys.
Numero uno. Again, this is taking back to like the show I probably most look forward to in the 90s. I don't know if it still holds up today, but it hits home a lot harder now that I live in Michigan, right? So this is a 7.2 out of 10.
Oh, I should have used that for you instead, huh?
Let's go. 91 to 99. Tim the Toolman Taylor. Home Improvement. Again, it's like reflecting on these sitcoms, like really like the setup of all of them is the same, right? Like you have this family, they're going through stuff. They have this sage, wise neighbor that talks them through everything. And then you know what? At the end of the episode, everything's good. But I don't know. I feel like I grew up with that show. It was hilarious. Like Tim was always so out of line with his jokes and humor, and it was just good. I still wonder what Wilson looks like to this day.
Don't IMDb it. You'll be
disappointed. I know.
Look up the actor.
I didn't look it up. I looked up the rating. I didn't look that up. But Earl Hinman. Yeah. But yeah, that's my number one.
What a clever little, like, I guess, I don't know what you call it, like a plot mechanism just to have him behind something all the time.
Yeah.
And it just,
they really played on that too later.
Yeah. No matter where he went, it was like, no longer had to be the fence, but could be like a plant or something else,
Yeah. Well, I remember like as a kid, I don't know, we probably watched E.T. or something, and they were like, oh, tonight you might get to see his face. Like they would tease that sort of stuff too, and you were like all excited.
No, you're
to
not.
talk about it at school.
Yeah.
Were there better episodes than when he did like the man's kitchen or like he redid his son's bedroom? Those episodes were awesome.
Yeah.
I just
the
love
bin
those
for
episodes.
3000-ater.
Yeah.
More power.
And Al was such a good straight man, like one of the best straight men out there. I always remember when the episode where he like tells Tim he can tell what kind of wood it is by how it smells, and he puts his sock on there and he's like, oh, there's like some sort of mold in the wood. And I don't know, it just stands out. That stuff was so good. And I think what was cool about Tim Taylor was they were all used to the dumb dad that, was like always made the mistakes and he was the doofus of the family. But like where Tim, I felt like he was that guy, but he wanted to do the right thing all the time. And his heart was always in the right place. He wasn't just a pure idiot.
Yeah. Idiot. Yep. I would agree with that.
And
he wasn't
the show
a Homer Simpson. Right. Yep.
Yeah. And the show was based on him where a lot of times the dad was like the secondary doofus,
Yep.
Yeah.
Where he was the one learning a lot of the lessons, So that was cool. That was a good script flip, like you said, Nick. Like it's cool stuff.
Yeah,
great
I
show.
thought it was a good show too. Great show. Definitely on my short list too.
Me too.
My short list, but not my top 5.
What?
No, very, very good though. My number one, now I get to fully nerd out. God, I truly loved watching like every episode I could of this next show. It ran from 1987 to 1994, so it really did split some time, split some decades. But it is Star Trek: The Next Generation.
What?
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I don't feel so
What?
bad about
Is that really?
Buffy.
Yeah, don't.
We're
That's
even.
no,
We're
you're
even.
wrong.
Thank
Star
you.
Trek.
Yeah.
Wrong Star Trek.
You're a Trekkie?
Well,
Who knew?
I like the
Never
new
guessed.
generation or the next generation. It like I don't know, the stories just sucked me right in, and I thought, I mean, at that time too, I was almost immediately more drawn to Patrick Stewart as like the leader versus William Shatner, even though Captain Kirk was pretty cool too, but there's just something with Jean-Luc Picard, and he was kind of like a badass, or at least they made him into more of a tough guy, and but he's super smart and willing to use his smart style with the villains and figure out a new way. And it was just so creative, right? Everything. It was. I like any show like that blends episodic stuff. Like you're gonna go from one problem to a totally different one the next. But then the common thread is the characters, and you get to know them, and then it's always really, really fun when like 2 seasons later you can go back and reface the Romulans over this issue, and try to figure it out. And it's like callback stuff. And then the Borg come in, and there's great storylines with the Borg that were creepy as hell. I still think that whole storyline was just incredible when looking back on it. So yeah, that's my number one when it all came down to it. Out of like, now I don't know, I haven't watched it in 25 years, 30 years, but man, out of all those shows throughout the 90s, that was definitely one that we had Fox, and Fox carried it, and I would definitely watch like every new episode that I could.
I'm gonna sign off all our teams
That's-
meetings like this from now.
Spock, that's
Who knew?
Spock, man. That's not what we're talking about here.
He's not on there?
Had Vulcans.
No.
What was he, a Vulcan? Was that what it was? What
Yeah,
was it
he's a
called?
Oh,
Vulcan.
now you don't know Casey?
I'm
Yeah,
a Star
he's a
Wars
Vulcan.
guy. I'm a Star Wars guy. I hated
You can
Star
be
Trek
both.
in all four. No, you
You
can't.
can be both. How
You might as
you
well
know what, the
cheer
new-
for
the
you
Star
and
Trek is
NDSU
good.
at the same time.
The new stuff is good. The new Star Trek. That's good.
Chris
Hmm.
Pine?
Chris
He's
Pine?
great.
That's
Never
good.
watched it. Never watched it. Refused.
Oh,
You're
watch.
missing out.
Casey.
You're missing out.
this is why you get picked on, Casey.
You know what? I'd watch it, but I would
Hater
hate
in
it.
the house.
I know I would hate it when I watched
You would
it.
not. The Chris Pine
Would.
stuff is good.
No, you're not. You're such like a comic nerd and such a sci-fi nerd along with me. Like you'd love it. You're just
Could be
you're
better.
hating you're hating on
I
your own
wasn't
type.
gonna call. I was gonna say savant, not nerd. But
You
I
know,
I can say nerd.
like it.
I'm a nerd. I love this stuff.
I'll take it all. Buffy's my number 3 show. I get it.
But TNG, baby.
Yeah,
You had
that's fair.
Worf. They spun it where they had a Klingon on their crew, which like if you watch the original Star Trek, they're bad boys.
Yeah, right.
But now you got one. So they're always teaching you about inclusivity even back then.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
Will Wheaton is on there, right? He gets that up.
Yeah, Ensign Crusher, Will Crusher. Yes, his mother Beverly was like the doctor.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I know about it. That he was on there.
Jonathan Frakes was number one. He played Commander Riker.
Mm. That
and
the
he
dude
went
with
on
the
to direct.
goatee.
Yep, and he went on to direct like all the movies that came out after that.
Really?
Pretty talented guy behind the lens.
No, I can't say it's a bad choice, other than that started in the 80s, but yeah, it's good. Move on. So my
As
number
you
one-
go to talk about another show
do
that
it,
had like a
do it.
30-season run after the
Still good
90s.
shows. My numero uno, if I had to like be honest in my heart, this is probably the show I watched quite a bit in the 90s and still
From
watch
90
quite a
From 99 to it's still running, right?
to infinity.
Yeah, it had 1 year in the 90s.
Yeah, it started in 1999, December 31st.
Yeah.
No, it
Pilot
ran from
episode.
94 to 2004, so pretty even split.
All right.
Closer. Yes.
IMDb 8.9. And it's
Oh,
the show Friends. Watched it a ton. Loved the cast. Grew on them through the years. Watched it a ton with my wife later when we were in college. And we still throw it on. If it's on TBS and I'm in a hotel room at 9:30 at night, I'm probably watching it. I pretty much know every episode by heart. Really enjoyed it. The last season of Friends, which doesn't take place in the 90s, but is like every single episode of that last season is just an emotional banger. So felt, when that thing ended, man, I shed tears. Like that was a powerful show for me. They did a really good job on that. So that was Friends. And I would say, with the caveat, now that we've talked about this list, if I followed your guys' rule, I would say Seinfeld is probably on my list somewhere. Same with Roseanne. I'd probably readjust my list if we could do shows in the 80s. But I followed my own rules based on previous lists.
You did. You're kind of a trailblazer in that regard.
I would say I'm more of a rule follower based on what we said before. So
Friends is
saying.
Friends. The ironic part, at least your number one movie or show qualifies.
Yeah,
That would definitely meet the criteria.
Criterion.
Michelle also would have Friends in there. So your list is closer to my wife's list. So
yeah, she's a great person. Met her.
she is a great
pleasant.
person. I'm so glad I'm married to her. Happily
yeah.
married.
You should be.
Keep your eyes off.
Thank your stars every
Shut
day.
it. Shut it.
That is a good. It's a good show, man. I didn't watch it until.
Always fun. Every episode was good.
Remember
I
how
have
that
to be
song-
honest, I can't remember watching an episode of Friends and being like, man, it was an average episode. Like, they were always fun. There was something
That's-
unique about every episode.
That's the whole way I view that whole show. It's like
Just
average.
average.
I'd get a couple chuckles, and I just couldn't. I don't know. I just didn't connect with them as much as other people. But that's cool. Other people obviously did.
Yeah, I get it. It wasn't black inner city guy,
No.
what you normally would connect with. So
Yep.
Come
All I know.
Come on. No. Yeah.
Connection doesn't have to be like, right. It doesn't have to be about appearance, though, right?
No,
Storyline. Like, what do you connect with?
I went solely on appearance. I looked handsome like all those folks on.
I think every 3 years, like
Drinking coffee in New York.
Oh yeah,
we
my big
watch-
mug.
all of Friends, like every 3 years. That's like one of Amy's top shows, and
Yeah.
like every 3 years we go through the whole 10
It
seasons
did.
or whatever.
And in case he said Lacey was into it. So I mean, I know from my experience, it seems to appeal really heavy to females. And I think it was.
And me.
I don't know if it was super unique, but the fact that at least half their cast was really, it was a lot of cast, and almost by the end it was female driven. I mean, those three female leads had definitely Jennifer Aniston had the most credit out of anybody by the end.
Yeah, most of the major storylines were driven by them in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, the other guys. David Schwimmer had a hot little career for like a little bit, but then I think people got the Ross thing got kind of burned out quick, and
He had a shtick for sure.
Matt Perry too. I mean, you could only play like the kind of sarcastic, smarmy guy in so many things before people.
Smarmy.
Okay, we've kind of seen that.
Smarmy.
I think he epitomized smarm, right?
Yeah,
I'll go with it.
I like this style. Yeah, he's
Yeah, no, it was
so
but
sarcastic.
It works. It worked. To me, all those things work in like certain doses, right? But if it goes on for 7-8 years, it's like, man, what else can you do?
Well, it's a show I would imagine that if you didn't necessarily start from the beginning watching it, it would be hard to jump in later seasons and enjoy the characters. Because like most shows that go on for a long time, the characters become caricatures of themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Ross in the first couple seasons, pretty reasonable guy. Later seasons, he's just like this neurotic, psychotic guy. Same with Chandler.
The writers pivot and they shift to gear that way, right?
Yeah, you pick what people think are funny and you just blow it out.
Yep.
And so yeah, all those guys become characters later on. So I think that's definitely probably one of the worst shows for that, where if you jumped on later, it's like, I don't like, this isn't even funny. These guys are so over the top. But
Yeah, Joey was just so dumb by the end.
Yeah, and Chandler was so sarcastic by the end, and Monica was such a type A clean freak that just all those things became so big. But if you organically grew with it, it was funny. It was inside jokes. It just felt like they were messing with you, in some ways. But my number one.
Well, all right.
I like it.
All right, good stuff, boys. Another good successful pod. Came in hot, left hot.
Yeah, it was like a 5-minute period where we were very cold. But we made it through.
Any apologies? Any
Whoa.
Apologies.
Are you looking for
Yeah, would you like to
Apologies.
apologize?
Well, okay, you're talking about 5-minute period of cold. What was cold?
No, I'm just when we're trying to transition. I felt like we just
Yeah.
dragged through that a little bit, but no, it was a good episode. I have a shout out, a former student of mine, Spencer Haig. He was listening to the pod. He was one of the very apathetic students when I was teaching P&E. He took some offense to that, so I wanted to shout him out. He was mad I didn't mention his name. So, Spencer, if you're listening, thank you.
What up,
You're a great
Spencer? Where's Spencer at?
Year 3, UJ, still rocking and rolling. So,
Okay,
cool.
A very cool kid. He's also angry we haven't had him on the show when we had Brock on the show. So, sorry.
Well,
it is.
We'll have a guest next week. Special guest next week.
Oh yeah, get excited, everybody! It's been a while since we had a little guest.
Face.
Oh, should we
We
put
shouldn't-
a
we shouldn't do
Wilson
that with
filter?
the
see his
Is that a
face?
thing? All right, we'll
And
see
that
what
way
we can
they
do.
could just fill us with their wisdom without us ever knowing what they really look like.
I like
It's a
that
brilliant plan.
anonymity. I like that. You can just wear a face
right.
mask with a fence painted on it. I mean, everybody's got those now.
Great.
Yeah.
Should have
Nice.
did that. Well, that concludes episode 37 of PT Shop Talk. As always, you guys want to email us at ptshoptalk@gmail. Go right ahead. Follow us on Facebook at PT Shop Talk. Check us out on YouTube. We throw the videos up there unedited. So if there's ever anything crazy I edit out, which has happened like twice ever, it's on there because I don't know how to edit videos. So until next time, I'm Casey Hansen, and with me as always is Nick Doling and Jeremy Van Klompenberg. See you later, everybody.